A famous philosopher once said that reading adds a certain flavor to your life, a certain character and beauty, if you will. Being so inspired by so many various authors, it motivated me to write my own books, and in turn has helped me to develop a greater appreciation for the written word. So my thought was to present the top 10 books that have really influenced my life in a particular way and shaped the way in which I think and view things around me. I'd love to know what all of you think and what your views are, whether you agree, and more importantly, what are the book titles that you think have influenced you the most? I'd love to hear that. So without further ado, here are the 10 books that have influenced me the most. Paulo Coelho's book, The Alchemist, is perhaps the only book that I have reread at least 5 times. Why would I do something like that? Well, it's simply because this book has so much to offer and there's so much of depth to it. There are 2 ways in which you can read it. One is at the surface level for the story that it is, but if you look a little carefully, you'll actually discover there's an undercurrent, a more hidden story that lies beneath the words that are actually printed on the pages. And I think for a lot of people, when they actually sit down to read it with that deep sense of searching, they'd actually begin to discover a much wider ocean that exists and draw from that. And that's exactly what happened with me. So which is why this particular book represents not just a man's journey in life, but for people overall. The sense that there are many treasures that lie within themselves, but sometimes it's the journey that is most important to unravel and show that to them. Obviously, there are 2 camps that exist within the Ayn Rand fan-based community. Those that prefer the Fountainhead and those that prefer Atlas Shrugged. While Atlas Shrugged is no doubt a sensational novel, I often find that it is the Fountainhead that really is able to bring to fruition the very essence of what her philosophy and take on life really was. I think as an author, she writes with a great sense of urgency and depth, revealing through the characters that she has brought to life through Howard Rock, Gail Wynan, and Dominic Francon. What exactly is it that sets apart certain people of great talent and vision from those that fall within the mediocre bucket of humanity? To me, it is an essential novel that really demonstrates the great urge and need for people to push the boundaries and truly discover something more about themselves and to contribute wisely to the wider society that exists. Now, The Count of Monte Cristo is a famous story that has been adapted in terms of cartoons, comics, movies, and countless other abridged and you could even say alternate versions by different other authors as well. But really, if you look at it, what Alexandre Dumas really was able to bring to life in this particular book is timeless. It's classic. It's unbelievable. The kind of trauma that this poor protagonist, Edmond Dantes, actually goes through, and how by significant strokes of luck at the initial stage and during his time in prison, he's then able to escape and avenge himself. But not just merely about avenging himself in a bloodthirsty way, but to do it with charisma, style, and a great sense where he is able at certain points to even forgive those who brought so much of suffering upon him. To me, it is a testament of the human spirit and is so poetically brought together by the words that Alexander was able to put together. And this to me was something that has influenced my style of writing for a long period of time. Now, Steve Jobs was my childhood idol. I really believed that when he was away from Apple for the time that he was, that he would eventually return and really be able to transform that company. And history has shown that that is exactly what happened. Now, I don't claim to be a prophet, but obviously it just demonstrates the real power that exists within a human being, that if they so desire and wish to exactly change the world in the way in which they envision, they can do so. And I'm not just trying to rip off the 1997 ad that he and the team came up with, but I think that Walter Isaacson was able to brilliantly encompass so much that happened within Steve Jobs' life and really be able to present a very strong and consistently flowing narrative from start to finish that is able to really showcase to us that even though Steve had his flaws, even though he had his setbacks, what really stood out was his ability to believe that he could achieve something great and indeed change the world. And this particular book is one of the few biographies that I hold very close to my heart, as I believe it really distills the essence of the power of a great visionary and CEO, and God rest his soul, his influence will live on for many years to come. Now, the other person who I love and idolize a lot is Richard Branson, or should I say Sir Richard Branson. And in his true style, in his way of being brutally honest and sort of jovial, he's able to really bring to life, and I know I'm saying bring to life a lot out here, so please excuse me for saying that so much, but I think that Richard Branson is able to really outline, what is it that drove him, what is it that motivated him, and I think that overall this is exactly a fun read. This is something that has inspired a lot of people to want to become entrepreneurs, and let me just be honest, myself included. But I think that what it really showcases is a sort of uniqueness that lies within him, that he is one of a kind, and he is someone who's enjoyed himself through all the pain, through all the suffering, through all the highs and lows. And it's such a diverse and vivid journey that he's able to paint in this book, that it is something that is worth checking out and worth having a good laugh at, and worth taking a few notes on, if you will. So for that, this is definitely something that is on my list. Now, a lot of people have said that The Bridge Across Forever is just a romantic book, while some others argue that it's a spiritual book. And yet some more argue that it is just about having the ability to really recalibrate yourself, to really fine-tune the way in which you are as a human being, in order to really not just be with the person that you want to be with, but also how to ensure that that relationship really blossoms, so it goes beyond just romance. I think that this book is an amalgamation of all three of those elements, and I think it's the book that I've read from Richard Bach's entire bibliography that I think is his best. Now, a lot of people may argue with that, and that's their opinion, I respect that. But for me, this is the book that really essentially brings to a certain clarity about what Richard Bach's viewpoints are. What exactly is it that he thinks are the motivating and drivers of life itself? And for that, I would give this book a straight A+, and really believe that it is a timeless classic, something that a lot of people can draw a lot of influence and inspiration from. And it is something that I continue to hold close again to my heart and read quite often, at least certain passages from it. Now, this book is obviously something that transcends, pop culture in so many ways, and has had such a lasting influence that so many people, even if they've not read it, they know about the author, they know about the title, and they know some of the brilliance of the philosophy that's contained within it. And I just think some of those lines are just so poetic. And from that, let me just bring out something that, I really love. And I paraphrase here, so do forgive me for this. But I love the point that he brings out about, to do with relationships, that, a husband and wife should be like the strings of an instrument, close together but not too close, and a little far apart but not too far. Because if they were too close or too far apart, you would not be able to hear the notes correctly and clearly. So it is important to have your time together and your time apart, because it is able to create the right harmonious melody that's needed. And so many other points, like even the other one about the fact that children are not really your children. They come through you but are not from you. They are simply life's longing for itself. And it is just so outstanding, some of the things that Kahlil Gibran has penned down. And it just goes to show you that this is an author, who was able to break past so many boundaries which are there, and really, more than anything else, just showcase a kind of beauty to the world and life around. And I think for that, it's something that is going to live on well for many centuries to come, and be considered as a very, very important publication. Now, it's surprising that for a lot of people, they've never heard of this book, but many people have. And I think that what's so interesting about this particular novel is that, well, apart from the fact that it is quite a big novel to read through, it really blends together. MMK was able to sort of wove together so many important elements from that historical period and really stitch that together with the narrative that she, laid out before the reader. And I think that, with regard to the protagonist and his journey from being orphaned at such a young age to his early years spent at a particular palace and meeting the woman that he would eventually marry, and how his journey in life really unfolds, is something that, for those of you who are not just inspired by Indian culture, but that sort of fusion of East and West, that sense of different people longing to just be a part of something and to be with each other, and more than that, I think it's something that she was able to hold the reader's attention for so many pages. That's well over 900 pages, but really demonstrate and really showcase a great sense of storytelling. And for that, I give her top props for it. Now, I'm going to share a secret over here, guys. The truth is that until probably grade 11, I hated reading. Yeah, sure, I read books. I had some books which I had to read in school, but I hated reading. The turning point for me really came when I read this novel. It just sort of randomly happened to land on my desk. I started to flip through a few pages and I was hooked. Michael Crichton, again, God rest his soul, was an exceptional author. I think that, what was so interesting about him was that he was able to sort of look at things and say that, how exactly can I just put together a very interesting story that would make people just sit up and just want to turn each and every page. And I'll be honest, it is what and was a major influence for my book Orion's Children, which is the first part of my alien science fiction saga. And if you guys haven't, do check it out. I'd love to hear what you think of it. But I think that The Lost World was really a huge cornerstone for where I drew a lot of inspiration from to actually write that. And it is a book that I think has a lot of fun, a lot of adventure, and dare I say, I would call it slightly more engaging than Jurassic Park. Now, a lot of you are saying blasphemy. Well, I'm sorry, but that's just my opinion. It doesn't have to be yours. But it is a book that, for those of you who haven't read it, do read it. Trust me, the movie did not do it any justice. You definitely will enjoy this. And finally, Jeffrey Archer, it just goes without saying, is who he is and what he stands for and how far he's reached. He's brilliant. I mean, his ability to tell a story is second to none. And what I found interesting was that the subject matter that exists in this story was something I never knew about until I picked this novel up about 10 years ago. And then I got to know even more about the ill-fated, initial attempt of scaling Mount Everest by George Mallory and his crew. And to me, at least, it served as a real tribute, a real honor for a man, who really tried to do something so monumental. And while people might say that they don't know for sure whether he actually did make it to the top, hearts of hearts, and it's not just because of Jeffrey's opinion, but I think he did. That's just my view. But I think that what it stands for is the marrying of how Mother Nature and humanity work together, and how that, without respecting Mother Nature, things can, again, go really awfully wrong. But I don't think that was really the message of the book. I think the book itself was a very sweet and a very, very true to heart narrative that really talked about the people at that time, what was really going on, and how they were really aiming to do something incredible. And for that, I think they deserve all the accolades that we can give them. So with that, guys, thank you so much for actually watching this all the way through and for listening to me talk about the books that have inspired me the most. Again, I'd love to know what you think. Tell me if you agree or if you don't. What is it that you found inspiring by each of these books that you may have read? And more importantly, what are the books that have inspired you the most? I'd really love to know what other titles you probably would recommend so I could check them out. And do let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Bye.